Just go here, mommy, where you can just go in the thing, you press it.
Oh, I didn't know. Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the virtual public consultation for phase 2 of the PowerGen Port of Spain Decommissioning project. I am Francois Otley, Corporate Communications Officer and assigned Community Relations Officer for this project. A special welcome to the residents of our neighboring community and other key stakeholders who are joining us via the Zoom platform today. The dismantling and removal of the 4 turbine stacks is a signal event for all of us as it brings us to the end of an era in energy supply. As the country finds more efficient means of electricity generation, PowerGen is also making the requisite shifts as we continue to keep the lights on and supply power to the national grid. Today's meeting is intended to appraise you of what has been accomplished to date and to detail the next steps in the demolition process. It is also part of our obligation as a responsible company to be fully compliant with regulatory requirements. I'd now like to share this evening's agenda. We will have opening remarks from PowerGen's General Manager. We will have a project overview by the project manager, the demolition approach for the project by the decommissioning project director, health, safety, and environmental aspect by the HSC coordinator, a discussion which will include a question and answer segment. So we will be receiving your questions at that time via the chat feature, as well as a special presentation from UDCOT. And then we will share the contact information of our project and key members of our team. At this time, I'd like to welcome PowerGen's General Manager, Mr. Surendranath Ramsingh, to deliver his welcome remarks. Over to you, Mr. Ramsingh.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us in this ongoing public consultation with the Woodbrook and neighboring communities, and for allowing PowerGen the opportunity to share our progress on ongoing works on the demolition of our Port of Spain plant. Our phase 1 exercise has been completed safely without incident or adverse impact on the environment, and without disruption to the lives of persons on our neighboring communities. This was our goal from the start, and I'm pleased to say that we have honored that commitment. The first phase of our Port of Spain decommissioning project addressed scaffolding and asbestos abatements, involved the local requirements and international guidelines and procedures to safely on our neighboring communities and dispose of asbestos products and regulated industrial material from the start. And I'm pleased to say that we have honored. Those works commenced on June 2020, shortly after we held our first virtual public consultation with you. Now that this has been completed, we are preparing to commence phase 2 of the project, which will include the dismantling, demolition, and disposal of the 4 stacks or chimneys, as you know them, that have dominated our skyline for over 6 decades. As some of you may know, our approvals to conduct site works are governed by stringent regulations. This requires rigorous pre-work assessments of potential social and environmental impacts. In consultation with the Environmental Management Authority, the Port Corporation, the Ministry of Works and Transport, and other regulatory agencies. Having met all other requirements for compliance, our collaboration with our home communities is not just another requirement. It is a major aspect of how we operate. PowerGen is not just about power, it's about people too. This community has been an important part of our history and has in many ways defined who we are. Most notably, it is here we have housed our Ryson Road Art Wall, which is a showcase of the artistic abilities of our nation's youth through our school art competition. It is on this site that the 4 distinctive stacks stand that have signaled commuters, steel bands, diners, and the revelers onto the avenue, an iconic center for food and entertainment. It is understandable that we feel some sense of sadness as we meet this evening to signal that very soon those stacks will no longer be a landmark. Local content has been a key component of our project planning and delivery. And in this phase, Amcoel Engineering Services Limited has been contracted to carry out the dismantling and disposal of the stacks and other associated works. We are confident in our project team and our experienced suppliers. We believe that we have the best expertise to safely complete our scope of works while remaining compliant with established guidelines and with minimal disruption. In conclusion, I restate that one of the key goals of this project is to undertake these works with minimal disruption to the environment and our neighboring communities. PowerGen will make all efforts to ensure achievement of this goal. I now turn you over to our project manager, Mr. Eddie Nicholas, and members of his team to share in greater detail the procedures and plans that will soon be underway. I thank you for your time and look forward to hearing from you during the planned question and answer sessions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Nicholas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ramsing. I'll be sharing a presentation today on the All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for your attendance and participation in our public consultation on the PowerGen Decommissioning Demolition project. The team is here today to share information with you and to have a conversation about the upcoming activities on the site. Following the cessation of plant operations in 2016 and subsequent make-safe activities, we embarked on phase 1. The abatement works. As shared by our general manager, these works were completed in March 2021 safely, no incidents. This means that we can now move on to phase 2, the demolition. And we can see that this will be starting on the 3rd of August, 2021. This is where we will be moving to remove buildings and utilities from the site and the iconic stacks that was mentioned by the general manager. Once demolition is completed and all materials have been removed from the site, we will then embark upon the site rehabilitation, which will be the 3rd and final phase of this project. Here we see a schematic of the overall site area where all the works will be continuing for the next few months. Right? This drawing shows the entire block where we have 3 companies occupying most of the space. We have the furnace property, that's off to the left, that blue area. And then we have the T&Tech buildings. And the larger of the 3 rectangles representing the buildings is formerly known as the concourse block. And we have the 2 other smaller buildings is the training facilities. These buildings, point to note, these buildings are not part of PowerGen's project, but are now scheduled for demolition. And this, we must say, is a change from the information that we brought before, which indicated that these buildings would not be removed from the site. But this would be done via the PowerGen project, but the T&Tech project, sorry. Less visible on the site are 2 smaller areas that are occupied by the National Gas Company. These areas house the natural gas station that delivered fuel to the power plants when they were operational. All the other areas in white belongs to PowerGen. So for those of you who would not have understood the aerial view too much and that schematic, we now show an actual picture, a partial view of the site. And we can see the furnace property just to the right where the cars are parked. We have the yellow area being highlighted is the T&Tech concourse building and one of its training buildings. And far off, you can see the main turbine area and the 4 iconic stacks. So now that we have refreshed your memory in terms of the layout and what stands on the site, we want to focus in into the activity area, what has been approved for demolition at this point in time. So just to the right, lower right, we have the 2 gas turbines. Some of you would know them and you would see the signs GT5 and GT6. So those would be removed from the skyline. Then we have the mechanical workshop. This is the area that would have been used for the technicians to perform repairs on the turbines when they were running. We will be erecting a screen just off of Ryston Road there because of the close proximity of this building to the roadway. My project director, Mr. Todd Garrett, will elaborate further on this particular use. And last but not least, the iconic stacks standing 53 meters, just over 175 feet, that has graced the Port of Spain skyline for so many years. They will be yet next to go. So how are we going to do it? And Mr. Garrett would go into some greater details, but I'm still going to share some information. The gas turbines, they were modular and they would be removed in the similar fashion. Package units, they would be just disassembled and carted away. The mechanical workshop, a brick and mortar structure with some steel. We're going to be using an excavator to pull those brickwork into the building, which is a common technique used in this type of demolition. And we will also be unbolting and cutting hot and cold in order to get the steel members out of that building. There will be dust suppression equipment, which will be elaborated on by Mr. Garrett, just in case we have dust on the facility. Noise. As in any demolition project, we expect that there will be some level of noise. But the level of noise that is expected will be well within the conformance and consideration of safe limits by the EMA. Again, my colleague, Anika Little, who is the HSE coordinator, and Mr. Garrett will expand on this in terms of our controls and our protection system. But to reiterate what was said previously by the general manager, we continue to work collaboratively with the appropriate state agencies and regulatory bodies to ensure that we are fully compliant on all aspects of the plan work for this phase 2 operation. You can be assured And I'll say it again, you can be assured that our commitment to do this right and to minimize any disruptions to residents in our home community would be looked after. So in that case, we have sought and secured approvals from the Environmental Management Authority, the Port of Spain City Corporation. We have notified our partners, the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Transport, Trinidad and Tobago Fire Services, TNTech, National Gas Company, who resides on the side of the Port Authority. These entities were all informed so that we are all on board together. So this extensive collaboration has allowed us to have a very coordinated approach on how we conduct the demolition and dismantling on the site. This work will begin in August, as indicated, and we will continue through 2022. But during the course of that time, we'll be employing all the necessary protocols on site to ensure that we produce a clean product in terms of the demolition and there will be no issues. I will be happy to answer any of your questions after this presentation. Thank you very much for your attendance and for listening. I will now bring on Mr. Todd Garrett, the project director, to follow up.
Thank you, Eddie. And good evening to all the participants in this virtual meeting. We really appreciate the time you're investing with us to make this a successful project. As you know, due to COVID and the COVID restrictions, we've had some challenges with this project. However, the first phase was completed with an excess of 50,000 man hours completed on the site with no impact at all to the surrounding community. And that's a streak we want to keep going. Now we move on to the second phase, which is the deconstruction demolition phase of the project. We identified some smaller projects on the site that we could award to local contractors. We feel it's very important to include local contractors whenever possible. With that in mind, we identified some smaller projects in addition to the stacks, and stacks being the main priority as far as this part of the project goes. The stacks are going to be removed by cutting them into sections and lowering them to the ground with a crane. As you can see from the photo, stacks 1 and 2, which are the smaller ones in the far background, are completely made of steel. So they'll be torch cut in sections, hooked to a crane, and then lowered to the ground. At that point, they'll be cut into smaller pieces so that they can be manageable and put on trucks for shipment. And as you can guess, this isn't going to happen fast. So the amount of traffic involved from this activity is very small. I would think maybe throughout the project, if we averaged 1 truck a day, that's probably very close to what we're going to see. And also with all of that being steel on 1 and 2, it's all the material is going to be recycled. On stacks 3 and 4, which are the larger stacks in the foreground, they actually have a gunite lining in them. Some of you are familiar with gunite because you have a swimming pool. It's a concrete material that's sprayed on, and that's due to the heat inside of the stack. So those will be done in a slightly different manner. They'll still be hooked with a crane, set to the ground, processed in smaller pieces, and then removed from the site. It's just that we'll have to deal with the concrete lining that's involved with the stack, which will need to be jackhammered or hammer cut or saw cut, whichever is most efficient. Next slide. Dust is always a concern. As you've seen so far, dust has been very minimal. And again, with this site or these activities that we'll be doing on the site, the dust will be very minimal as well. As you can imagine, cutting steel with a torch doesn't create a lot of dust. Where we do have come in contact with it is what Eddie had mentioned earlier, is in right along Wrightson Road, we've got the mechanical workshop. That's a concrete block building that'll have to come down. In order to control the dust, we're going to put that screen up just to block any type of material that could come in contact with the public. It's just precautionary. It's probably not required and isn't necessary, but we want to go that extra length to make sure everything's protected. Water will be used there to spray as the block are falling to the ground, which will be very, very minimal as far as dust goes. Traffic, again, this will not be a traffic impact in any way. Again, an average probably of 1 truck per day. The biggest issue we will have would be the moving of the cranes into the site to remove the stacks, and that won't cause any disruption at all. And then finally, our final phase of the project will be the remediation. That won't start until we complete the demolition, which right now remediation is scheduled for sometime in the first quarter of 2023, barring any additional COVID restrictions, obviously. But that's our plan for getting started on to get the site clean of any environmental contamination. With that, I'll take any questions in the question and answer period, and I'll turn this over to Anika Little. She is our HSC coordinator for the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Todd, and good afternoon, everyone. We really want to say thank you again for being part of this collaborative process. You know, this is not the first time that we've come to you, and we are just really grateful that you take the time out to come and join us in this process. So as Todd said, my name is Anika Little. I am the HSC coordinator attached to the corporate HSC department, and I'm assigned to this project. And I'm going to be going through some of the HSC measures that are in place as we progress in demolition. So HSC management systems, safety first. Now, safety first is a really important aspect of our safety management at PowerGen. Safety first is not just a motto for our organization, but it's something that we live by. And to attest to this, PowerGen has implemented 2 management systems, ISO 14001:2015 and ISO 45001:2018. So the International Organization for Standardization has set 2 international standards that are the hallmark of HSE management. And PowerGen has voluntarily patterned our environmental and our health and safety management systems after these standards. So this is something that we had in place long before demolition. It is something that has been in place that has been at the power station, that has helped us to run that power station without any incident to you, the public. So this is the platform, this is the foundation from which we move forward in the demolition process. So the meat of the matter, right? HSE management of demolition works. So one of the key points that we have there is our engagement with stakeholders. Now, this is really important to us, and I know Mr. Nicholas touched on it a little bit. Engagement with stakeholders has been part of our process from the beginning. This is not the first time you've seen us, right? We've engaged with all the stakeholders that we needed to. We've gotten their approvals, and here we are engaging with you now. We've saved the best for last, the public. So what this means is that as the project proceeds, we are proceeding with all our required permits, all our required approvals, and all our required plans that are necessary as part of our CECS and part of our wider requirement for regulatory approval, fulfillment of our CEC. So as you are aware, this project proceeds with a CEC, which is a Certificate for Environmental Clearance. Stakeholder engagement is part of our CEC requirements, yes, but even if it was not part of our CEC requirement, we would have wanted to ensure that we collaborated with you, the public. So we are fulfilling our CEC requirements. One of those requirements is that we do monitoring. So we just want to ensure you that the project will proceed with monitoring. This is going to be air monitoring, ambient air monitoring, liquid effluent monitoring, and noise monitoring. We will be doing monthly ambient air monitoring of the atmosphere. The results will be submitted to the EMA for approval. We will be doing fortnightly noise monitoring. The results will also be submitted to the EMA. We will also be doing liquid effluent monitoring fortnightly. The results will be submitted to the EMA. So that's important to note because it's not going to be himself unto himself, but we will be having a third party involved in this entire process. Our approved method statement, that's another important point. So the project proceeds with approved method statements. And now when we say approved method statements, it means that we had a collaborative process with our specialist contractor, with our internal engineering specialists, our environmental specialists, our health and safety specialists. So we had a collaborative process. We looked at the procedure, we looked at the methods, we decided which methodology would be the best. And when I say the best, I mean the lowest risk. We decided which one would be the best. We completed our method statement on that, and we submitted it for regulatory approval. So our method statement was submitted to the EMA, as well as it was submitted to the OSH agency. Demolition risk assessment. Everything that we do at PowerGen, we employ risk assessment methodology, the risk assessment process. So we've done risk assessments for the project. We've looked at every activity, every job step related to this demolition project. We have looked at the hazards, we assessed the risk, and we put controls in place to ensure that all risk associated with the project are reduced to low risk. And not only have we done that risk assessment, those risk assessments, I should say, but we've submitted them to the regulatory agencies for approval. So if there's one thing that I really want to stress, and I want to allay any fears that you may have, PowerGen is not proceeding on a process just without any approvals or on its own strength. We have done what we needed to do in terms of our background work, in terms of our assessments. We've submitted it to the regulatory agencies as required, and we've received approvals. Another important point that you would see there is waste management and disposal. So the project will have waste. Just as the first phase of our project, the abatement, there was waste involved, and we disposed of it in a environmentally friendly manner, as well as a manner that was approved legally. This project is also going to have waste. The difference is it's not going to be any hazardous waste involved. So the waste that is going to be a part of this project, or as a result of this project, will mostly be construction waste, steel waste, metal waste, etc. So the things that can be recycled will be recycled. The things that will not be recycled, that cannot be recycled or reused, will be buried. Another important point, and just an overarching point that I really want to stress, is that even though we have contracted a specialized contractor to perform the process on our behalf, PowerGen will be supervising. The works will proceed according to our policies and our procedures. PowerGen will ensure that the work continues in a manner that is environmentally friendly, as well as a manner that will ensure that there is no risk to you, the public. Okay, so this is my last slide, and this is emergency response. So I know I spoke a little bit about our CEC, fulfilling our CEC requirements. And one of those CEC requirements was that we prepare an emergency response plan. So we have an emergency response plan for the site, and this was also submitted for regulatory approval, right? So the emergency response plan has 3 different levels. Similarly, the emergency response plan for our first phase had 3 different levels as well. And when we came to you at that point in time, we promised you that there will be no level 3 incidents and there will be no level 2 incidents. So let me explain a little bit about what the levels are. So a level 1 incident is an incident where there is no immediate danger to the public and the incident does not extend beyond the boundaries of the power station site. A level 2 is where there is potential risk for the public and the environment. And there's also a really great potential for that incident to extend beyond the boundaries of the power station site. And now level 3 is an incident where there is immediate danger, immediate risk, immediate hazards to the public. And that incident does and will extend beyond the boundaries of the power station site. So when we were doing the phase 1 abatement works, we promised you that there will be no level 2 and no level 3. And we are back again and we are making that promise, which we held fast to for our phase 1. We are back again and we're making that promise. We have assessed the risk. We have ensured that our methods are low risk methods. And we are here again to assure you that in line with our emergency response plan, there will be no level 2 emergencies, no level 3 emergencies. And if we do have any incidents, they will be ones that will not pose an immediate risk, any immediate danger, any immediate threat to the public. And there certainly will not be any incidents that would extend beyond the boundaries of the power station. So I really hope that what we have said so far has been very insightful and helpful. And if you have any questions, we will be back again for the question and answer segment. So I now turn you back over to our moderator.
Thank you very much, Anika. We would like to make a special mention of the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, the Honorable Keith Scotland. I see him as on the list of attendees. So we say a special welcome to you, MP Scotland. We will now transition into our question and answer segment, which will be conducted via the chat feature on Zoom. Also present with us today to answer questions related to the TNTech aspect of the project is TNTech's Safety Manager, Mr. David Sinclair, and Corporate Communications Manager of TNTech, Ms. Annabelle Brasnell. So they are on site with us to answer any questions that members of the viewing audience may have concerning the information that has been shared. I'd just like to ask the Balroops team to remove my video for one brief moment before we commence the question and answer segment. So I'll just ask them to play the PowerGen animation as we work on making the chat section live. So we have shared a lot of information. Okay, I'll ask the Balroops team. Thank you very much. So we are moving on, as I said, to the question and answer and discussion segment. To pose your questions, you have 2 options. You can either type your question into the chat feature on the side of the chat, and I see that we have a prompt here indicating to please share your questions in the chat. If you are asking an audio question, you can raise your hand to be acknowledged, and I will acknowledge you. Please state your full name and your address or the organization that you represent. So the floor is now open for any questions from our viewing audience. I observe that we have 46 participants in the chat joining us, and we want to thank you for making this public consultation part of your afternoon's activities. So as I indicated, the chat is open for questions. The Port of Spain plant, as the site it's on, has been a site of power generation for 121 years. That is up until 2016, when power generation activities on the site were ceased. And a bit of a history lesson, the man that chose that site was a British gentleman by the name of Edgar Tripp. And he established power generation activities using steam turbines, at the times called dynamos, on that site in 1895, in March of 1895. So again, the chat section is open, and I will keep the chat section open for probably the next minute. It's very indicative of the very detailed presentation that was given by our team, that we don't have any questions. And I know that the project is going to get the glare of the public in hopefully a positive light when we begin to see the stacks be demolished and removed in a controlled manner. Okay, so I'm going to leave the chat open for the next 30 seconds. And if we do not receive any questions, then we will transition to the next segment of today's public consultation. So we have been conducting public consultation activities probably towards the late 2018. So this is not the first public consultation that we have had with our neighboring community and stakeholders who live and operate businesses near the project. Okay, so we have no questions either via the chat or via the audio feature, the ability to ask questions. At this time in the program, we are pleased to advise that a stakeholder who is involved in the future of the project has asked to join today's activity. So we have a representative of UDCOT. He's going to give us a glimpse into the proposed future use of the site, which they have called the Colville Development Project. And this activity will occur after phase 3 of our project, which involves the remediation of the site. So UDCOT heard we were having this activity, and they have asked to be part of our presentation. So we look forward to hearing from Senior Architect at UDCOT, Mr. Marlon Charles. So at this time, I'll ask Balroops to bring Mr. Charles online, as well as to bring his presentation on screen, so he can share details about the Colville development. Let's welcome Mr. Charles.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Marlon Charles, Senior Architect at the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a short presentation of our preliminary conceptual design for the PowerGen site, once the decommissioning works has been completed. We are currently referring to this project as a Colville development at the PowerGen Port of Spain site. Next slide. I think there's a previous slide with a master plan. Okay, no problem. This is our proposed conceptual design of the Colville street development provided by our Port of Spain revitalization consultant. This site is 7.5 acres or 3 hectares. The main activities of this mixed-use project is outdoor recreational space, residential living, office building, retail, shops and entertainment, and parking. The elements of this project are arranged in a campus layout in which an open public space located northwest corner of the site. The purple block represents a residential tower of 324 units along the R. Peter Avenue. The dark blue block represents an office building along Colville Street of maximum 7 stories. Between the residential block and the office block is retail shops and the entertainment zone. The light blue block is a car park structure that supports the car parking for the complex, which is off of Park Avenue. Next slide. This is an artist's impression of the development shown from the corner of Arthur Avenue and Colville Street. We see the open plaza at the corner with the residential block in yellow and the office block in blue facing it. Next slide. The next slide is next steps. So the next steps for this project is that we'll be holding some public consultations to get feedback from stakeholders to get their input in this project. We will conduct social and financial feasibility studies to assess the viability of the project. Then we will develop our conceptual design and obtain investment through the private sector. Oh, and well, this slide actually that you're seeing actually refers to the overall Port of Spain Revitalization Master Plan. In the red line indicates the boundaries of Port of Spain, and the blue highlighted areas are our key mixed-use development projects, of which this PowerGen site is one. And on this site plan, item 4 represents the PowerGen site. So that's, thank you for your time. I'll pass you back to the moderator.
And for sharing your updates on the plans for the Colville Development Project. UDCOT has indicated that any questions relating to that project can be emailed to info@udcot.co.tt. So before we conclude, I would like to make our viewing audience and members of our neighboring community aware of our channels of communication specific to this project. I have been the assigned community relations officer rather, Mr. Francois Utley, and our company is accessible on a 24-hour basis in relation to the aspects of this planned activity. So during the hours of 8 to 4:30 p.m. from Monday to Friday, we can be reached at 624-0383 extension 0, and after hours, we can be reached at cell phone direct line 487-6621. You can also email us at postdecom@powergen.co.tt. You can find a dedicated page specifically for this project at www.powergen.co.tt/postdecom and look for timely updates on our social media channels. So before we conclude, we just want to share in the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health rather, and the government's drive to try to keep us safe and to avail yourself of any vaccine that is available to you. We have heard the Honorable Prime Minister say many times, the best vaccine is the one that is available to you. So again, we remind you to wear a mask, watch your distance, wash your hands. And we want to say on behalf of the project team to thank you for joining us for this afternoon's phase 2 public consultation for the PowerGen Port of Spain decommissioning project. May we all stay safe. Thank you and have a good afternoon.